Oh, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to podcast number 100 of the Swingman podcast. As you can see, things are slightly different. We've upgraded. We've gone for a video podcast to celebrate the 100. And we're probably going to stick to it now from now on. As ever, I'm your host, Jordan Edger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. And I think before we really kick off in what's gone on in the NBA, we should reflect. 100 podcasts is a good achievement, lads. It really is.
Yeah, we've been at it, a couple years now?
Yeah. I think it's well over 2 years. So I think we're in our third year.
Yeah,
now,
and I know
it's an impressive
this is our first time doing a video, so it is quite scuffed. But bear with us; we will get better at it as we did with the start of the podcast. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, the digital backgrounds are really pushing my computer to the limit currently. So
we've all selected our favourite jerseys, or at least one of our favourite jerseys.
Yeah, Nathan, our graphic designer, has really put in the work, and thankfully there was a Sixers option there and a Timberwolves one, so we were all set from there. And surprisingly, that Howard hasn't gone for 3 Celtic jerseys.
Louis took the one with the Celtics jersey in already.
He's hiding behind it, actually. Very true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we've gone through all sorts of things. Obviously, we now team up with 2K quite a lot. Loads of the Swingman spotlights. I've got to say, my favourite podcast that we've done, it'll always be the draft one that we did, primarily just through editing that with the draft sounds in, was quite fun. But yeah, I mean, here's to another 100 podcasts. That's what everyone says. But let's move on. Let's go to some actual NBA news, and we'll move on to Kevin Garnett and his jersey being retired by the Celtics. We'll head over to our Celtics aficionado, Howard, if you want to touch on that.
Oh, God, mate. I've really taken the mantle of that, and I'm not sure where it came about, but I've got it now. So I'll quickly sum it up. But as we all know, Kevin Garnett was a big part of one of the better Celtics teams in recent times. We'll get on to the current Celtics team later because they're doing pretty well. But he was obviously a part of that team that won a chip with Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, all of them, and his number 5 jersey got retired. And there was a lovely moment that I think was, other than just him and reflecting on his career, that was a takeaway, was when Ray Allen was just shown and he came forward and they had a lovely embrace, and then Paul Pierce came along as well and made it the big three hug, and it was a nice moment seeing how they've had there's been a lot of beef and not so much back and forth. I feel like it was more on less on Ray Allen's side and more on everyone else's side. But they ended up, we could say, squashing it there. So it was nice.
I did see a tweet that popped off quite a lot on Twitter. It was like, I've never seen a team milk a championship as much as this 08 Celtics side, which did make me laugh because it is semi-true. But
it's strange as well because they're obviously like the most storied franchise. Well,
yeah.
Is it them or later? It must be the Celtics still in terms of championships total.
Yeah, I think
I'm not actually sure, but they're right next to each other.
Yeah, they're very.
It's just been a long barren run, really, hasn't it? Where like 80s and then just that one. But it's a bit of a bittersweet moment for me because I obviously consider my boy KG wrong way. I forgot that it's flipped as more of a Timberwolves legend than a Celtics legend. Which I know he wins the championship at the Celtics. I think that's what cements his legacy. But obviously I've got a great bit of affection for the man. I think he's an incredible personality, to be fair, and obviously a very good player.
Peak KG, MVP KG is Timberwolves KG. We all understand that.
Exactly. And, in an era dominated by genuinely class power forwards, you got Dirk, Tim Duncan. You can even throw Chris Webber in there as well. But a very deserved, I think, accolade for him. And hopefully it happens at the Timberwolves soon enough. I know there's a bit of a beef there between him and the owner, and that's why it's not happened since then. But I agree. I really like that moment where all 3 of them came together. Even if you did say it's probably more on the KG side of things than Ray Allen. I think Ray Allen's been chilling, if I'm quite honest. But
yeah. And I would say the Timberwolves one should be coming because he is the greatest player in their franchise history. So you can't. I don't think you can ignore that. Eventually,
it would have happened years ago, but there's a bit of I don't think he really likes the owner that much. I mean, he doesn't like the owner that much. I know there might be different type of ownership now in the Timberwolves. But in any case, they promised him like a position or maybe a stake in ownership after he retired, and they kind of pulled back from that, and he got annoyed, and he hasn't really been back there since, and he should be, because obviously a massive part of that franchise, and he didn't want to leave really, which is the strange thing about it. But yeah,
I know. It's always good to see. I think in any case, the jersey retirements for some of these legendary players are always sort of a good watch, and normally the films that they do and the tribute videos they do are really good for them. Not quite the Ben Simmons one that Philly did for him, but they're normally quite good. But in any case, as a segue we can use, let's talk about the current Celtics. On the rise a bit, Jason Tatum pulling them through, dropping sort of stupid scores night on night basis now. Are the Celtics sort of back on track now, would you say, or is this sort of a temporary peak in the season that's been a bit of a trough?
No, I mean, since January they're 23-8. Since the All-Star break, I think it's or like the last 19 games they're 16-3. So they've definitely been able to hold it down for a while. And I think there's some really interesting points when you look at the Boston team. Other than just, obviously, Jason Tatum started to pick it up a lot because he had quite a lull throughout the season. But he's definitely performing at a higher level than he was. But I think the really interesting part of the Celtics is when you look at their defense, because they are the best team when looking at defensive rating in the league. They've gone past the Warriors now, who were number one for ages. And one of the big reasons is how they use Robert Williams in their lineup and how they defend, because they essentially switch everything. And, they've got all of their players. Robert Williams is really athletic. Marcus Smart, we know what he can do on defense. And then you've got the two wings in Brown and Tatum, who are also very versatile. And the one that maybe doesn't fit as much is Al Horford, because you don't want Al Horford on a guard, but he can do enough where it works. And it's interesting because Al Horford played when he went to Philly. They tried playing him at power forward. It didn't work, and everyone kind of jumped on it after and thought, oh yeah, he never played power forward. Why did everyone think that would work? But he's playing power forward now with the Celtics, but it's in a role that they couldn't do in Philly. That's working out here, and it's where, because Robert Williams is so versatile, they actually play Horford on the center and then let Williams, maybe go out to the wing a little bit and make plays kind of off the ball and help fill in gaps and clean up where needed. And that tandem, along with having other great defenders like Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, off the bench, really helps out as well. It allows them to do that kind of complete switching all across all five positions, and that is one of the big reasons that they're doing as well as they are now. Yeah,
I haven't actually probably seen like a mid-season turnaround like this I can't even remember. I think the Utah Jazz had one a couple years ago, but that was because Rudy Gobert was injured for like the first half of the season. I think it was Donovan Mitchell's rookie season. He comes in and then they like go on the best run in the league and get like home court advantage. But this is completely different because this is all the same personnel and they've just rejigged things like you've quite aptly summarized already. It's very impressive. And I think the last time we probably talked in depth about the Celtics really was sort of early December-ish, maybe late November, where we were like, is this going to work between Tatum and Brown? Is this worth carrying on? Because it felt like the coach was calling them out like on a week-by-week basis. I remember Marcus Smart as well. He was saying that those two need to learn how to share the ball a little bit. Been accused of being a bit selfish, not being getting other guys involved. But I don't think you can. I mean, they've both been great in this run, but I don't think you can deny Jason Tatum's just electric form since the new year. I've got up here, he's averaging just under 28 points, just under 8 rebounds, and just under 5 assists, which is, the levels I think we wanted to see consistently from him, because we know he has that level of talent and physically he's just built like a perfect NBA player. So it's really, really impressive the way they have turned things around. And now you have to really quite consider them in that Eastern Conference sort of playoff battle. I mean, it's a bit of a bloodbath in the Eastern Conference, I think, in comparison to the Western Conference anyway. And they're right up in there. The only issue is they don't want to get too high a seed because you can come up against maybe the Brooklyn Nets or someone like that.
Hmm.
It's weird like that. So, but I think they've got every reason to feel encouraged about this moving forward. More than anything, it feels like they're on the right track now, building around those two young stars.
Yeah. I mean, the playoff picture now is certainly a lot different than you would have said going into All-Star Weekend in the fact of that it's quite viable now that the Celtics will finish above the Bulls, and I don't think many people would have been realistically thinking that a few months back. And it is testament, again, when you mentioned before, you can't really think of these mid-team or these mid-season sort of upticks in a team's performance. I'm still not realistically that bullish on the Celtics. I'll still be more bullish on the Bulls and the Celtics come a playoff time. I would back the Bulls over the Celtics if they were to facing off in the playoffs. But
I'm not so sure on that purely because I know Zach LaVine's been injured, but the Bulls' record against the best teams in the
top
East
seeds
is
bad.
so bad.
It is bad. Yeah.
I'm not too confident on them against the really good teams going into the playoffs.
Are we putting the Celtics in a really good team though?
I think they are.
They're 7-3 recently, but I still think that I don't know in those playoff series, one hard game, one bit of misfortune, it could be a bit of a snowball effect. But
I think the main reason people would go against the Celtics is a lot of the time in the playoff series, people look to the superstar to take them over the line. And if you look at, say, the Nets, you got KD, the Bucks, you got Giannis, even the Bulls, DeRozan's been a top 5 MVP candidate this year. Maybe people don't have that sort of confidence in someone like a Jason Tatum, but I think he's showing over the past few months that he can hit that level. And I think that's always been the question with him is, can he sustain it and be that out and out number one option? And I mean, it remains to be seen, but I think they can pull it off.
I mean, yeah, in these scenarios, I normally tend to favour the side, especially who has the best player. And I don't think there's any debate that Jason Tatum's the most talented player across the two teams. It would just be sort of what I've seen of the Celtics in playoffs before. But then same can be said that I've not really seen any of this new at Bulls. So, and the whole thing of their record against top flight franchises is a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, I said they're up there. I would still personally probably take the Nets, the Bucks, and probably the 76ers as well, purely because of the firepower they have now.
And the Heat.
Yeah. The Heat
to a couple of those teams.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm underselling the Heat. You want to talk about other players that have really stepped up. I think Bam Adebayo is firmly in the conversation with Defensive Player of the Year now. And maybe I'm underselling them. They're the number one seed in the East. So, yeah, maybe I should cut them in as well.
I saw the thing of that. I normally do pick him. I'm not actually sure if I did this year. But I did see a thing about Tyler Hero being like the current front runner for 6th man of the year. But he's currently played like 32 minutes on average a game or something like that. So it's like, where do you draw the line at a 6th man of the year vote? And I think that in fairness, it's something that they've done quite a while now. It should probably be like capped at a certain amount of minutes. And it's hard to do that because if a player was like unbelievably good and went 5 seconds over, where's the limit? But I do think when you're playing 33 minutes on average a game, it's quite hard to call yourself a 6th man.
And he's closing all of the games as well.
And he's closing, yeah. So
I mean, I'd still consider it.
I think it is, but it's like where's the line? If he just didn't start the game, got brought in the first time out, and then played the rest of the game, is he then a 6th man or how?
Yeah, it's true.
But that's going on a tangent. If we move away from move away from the Celtics, and we'll go on to a team that currently aren't in a good run of form like the Celtics are. We'll talk about LeBron and his Lakers. I think is the one that we can describe this. And before we started recording, I did think. I mean, I was making sure everything was sort of set up as best can be. And in my ear, I did hear you, Howard, say that you found a stat that you thought was absolutely hilarious. You needed to check.
Yeah.
So I am intrigued as to what this is because I've got genuinely no idea.
Before we get to that, I think we should talk about LeBron first before we start having a massive go at the Lakers. So do you want to start?
Oh, it's just a bad stat. It's not a good stat.
No, it's a terrible stat.
It's a terrible stat. Right, okay. I mean, yeah, look, LeBron is putting up sort of... It's the classic thing of LeBron, I think, every year where now that he's getting a bit older, he's sort of having to pick and choose his moments in terms of where he just absolutely carries his team or tries to carry his team to a victory anyway. He's been playing centre most games for the Lakers when he does these absolutely stupid scoring nights. Done a few recently. I mean, 50 points against the Wizards. He just drops them now, and it's almost like He doesn't break. Obviously, he does, but it's almost like he doesn't break a sweat without doing it. It's so natural to him. We had the discussion. He genuinely, if the Lakers are second or third in their conference, he is right up there with the MVP race. It's mind-boggling numbers for how bad his team has been, and the letdown of which, and not to sort of rain on the parade or to carry on the rain on it, but Westbrook was brought in this year to reduce the burden on on LeBron in these games, on the games on the road where he needs a rest or he doesn't need to play 36 minutes a night. Westbrook was meant to come in, set the offense up, and just beat the flat track bully. He'd be that flat track bully that he has been against these teams before. And it's not a criticism because you've got to do it. And right now he's putting up like 5 points, which is just not what you was expecting of a former MVP. So, I mean, King James will be King James regardless of his age. I think I genuinely can't see it, but I could see him doing this when he's like 39, 40 as well. I don't think he'll stop. I don't think 2 years is going to stop what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time you have to take a step back and put these things into perspective, because a lot of people have a go at LeBron or argue against him, and a lot of that comes from the whole GOAT debate. Is it him? Is it Jordan? But just as a stat throughout this isn't the stat I was talking about before, but he is currently leading the league in scoring at age 37 in year 19, and even more than that, if you look at people and what they averaged in year 19, the next up after him is Kareem, who averaged 14.6 in year 19. So that is closer to 0 than it is to what LeBron is averaging right now.
It's just nuts talk. It's nuts talk in terms of that.
Unbelievable.
When you talk about people and this is what I mean in terms of that, I can't see it being such a vast drop off of next season that he'd be nowhere near these numbers. I think they'll obviously be lower, is what I would guess, but I can't see him falling to half that. I just don't see a way in which, because of how well he treats his body as well, and where he picks and chooses his big game moments. It's the one. But I think I just had the first video voice break on.
Yeah, that was a big voice break.
So I'll take that one. I'll take that one on the chin for it.
I mean, what I would say is, whilst he is averaging, the highest scoring average in the league, I do prefer the LeBron of a couple years ago, who obviously he can't do it now because he chose to have Russell Westbrook on his team, but was that main point guard for the Lakers and was doing all of the playmaking, setting up the team. I think that's the best version of LeBron. But is it realistic that he can do that for the next few years with him getting older? Probably not. So I understand the avenue they went down, but it's, even though he is having a great season and averaging the most points he has for a very long time, it's not my favourite version of him.
I want to hear the stat now. I want to hear the bad stat.
So it was talking about Russell Westbrook earlier.
Oh.
And he's been in the news because he's not a fan of the family name being used for other things. And it was just something I came across today. It was just on Twitter, and it's actually I'll let you have a guess. I'll let you have a guess first. Since the All-Star break, what do you think his 3-point percentage is?
It is. I'm gonna guess it's got to be sub 20. It has to be.
All right, you got to say a number.
I mean, in my
18.
head, I had 22% in my head.
Okay, Louis.
I'm going 18.
All right, so his 3-point percentage since the All-Star break, he's not a good 3-point shooter anyway. He's 9%.
But
it is truly
single digits.
Is that the worst? Is that the worst in the league?
I mean, over that stretch, it must be. But I know for the season, for volume 3-point shooters, he is dead last.
I'd like to know how many 3-pointers that is. if I'm being fair on Russ, and he's not playing well. Everyone knows that.
How many has he got average a game?
Yeah.
Because I know he does take some stupid shots. He's got to be taking at least like 4 or 5 3 or 3 or 4.
And this is since the All-Star break, so maybe he has been down on just 3-pointers attempted in general. So that's why the stat looks as bad as it is. But I'm not sure of the ins and outs of it. I just saw that on the face of it and thought, good God.
Yes, it's the real clankers that get you, like the ones that just come straight back off the backboard.
It's such a weird situation. It's such a weird situation seeing Westbrook like this, though. I feel, because it's like I know he's had his moments, and like the Blazers walk-off one, I remember the last quarter of that. He was absolutely horrendous in that. So he's had his bad moments, but even so, it's like it's Russell Westbrook. I still think of him as that OKC player that is like the walking triple-double. And even then, he was mean for his three-point shooting, but he could still shoot. Like, if he was open with a three, I'd still expect him to knock it down. Whereas now, it's like Lakers fans don't even want him shooting an open corner three. Like,
I mean,
it's such a bizarre fall off, but yeah.
He's still a first ballot Hall of Famer. Let's not get that.
Yeah, 100%.
When it's with another primary ball handler like LeBron, who's as good as he is, and you're with him, and you're in LA, you know the spotlight just shines brighter than anywhere else in the NBA.
I fully appreciate that, and I get all of that. The thing that annoyed me was when he made the comment of that, like he didn't have any expectations set for this season, and you're like, surely everyone can see through that, because it's like you're joining the Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, albeit you might not expect a championship in year one, but you'd be expecting to be sort of up and around in the top three seeds of the conference, and you'd be expecting to get to conference finals. So that would be your aim. So especially coming off of seasons with the Wizards, it's such a weird mindset. I don't know if it's a deflection thing or a coping mechanism or something like that, but it's been very strange.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've never been a massive fan of him. I can't lie, purely because I do think he, like you mentioned, that Trailblazers quarter particularly. I think it comes to the defense sometimes with him. He just makes odd decisions. He's always just, part of me has always thought he can't be like your guy if you're going to go for a championship. Maybe not even a second guy, because I think he has the ego of a first guy wherever he goes. And I think maybe there is a part of that where he's just pulling so much because he wants to prove to everyone that he is the Russell Westbrook of old. And he knows LeBron needs help. Anthony Davis is also out, which doesn't help things. But he's just not been good the entire season, even when Anthony Davis was there. Even when he was like the main guy when LeBron was injured, it just doesn't seem to be working for him. It's not even an athletic thing. He's probably not... Yeah, he's definitely lost some athleticism than he previously had. He was an absolute monster in his prime. But it's not like he's completely finished in that regard. He just keeps making really stupid decisions.
Yeah, it's the basketball IQ that's really sort of deteriorated.
Yeah,
I've noticed in terms of recent years or months.
And yeah, I mean, that's always something for me that's been a problem with him. Even though he's a good playmaker, obviously he's averaged like 10 assists a season for like, apart from the season anyway, but the ones previously. So he's got it in him. I just don't think it's going to work. You know, things just like I said about the Celtics having a mid-season turnaround. Sometimes that is a very rare circumstance. And I think sometimes you can just tell when things aren't going to work out throughout the course of a season. And I don't think this is going to. But saying that, no one wants to face the Lakers as a potential 9th, 8th seed. They'll be in the play-in tournament, which will make things tricky.
Yeah, I mean, especially if AD's back, and again, this is a bit of a touch and go thing, but no team wants to come up against LeBron, Westbrook, and AD in a 7-game series, regardless of form. I mean, in all respects, doesn't completely, but form almost goes out the window for regular season when you get to the playoffs anyway. Players will just slate it off and they'll focus on game by game basis. So LeBron, I saw it was like the thing I saw the other day as well was that like. I think it was First Take. I think it was Stephen A. So classic clickbait here, but it was more of that. I think he was claiming that no one or teams in the league don't find LeBron scary anymore. And I'm like, regardless, like any side whatsoever, the stacked Warriors team that we're coming up against. I know it was a few years ago when he was more in his prime, but any team is going to be like terrified of coming up against LeBron, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's more the Lakers than LeBron himself. Like personally, I think quite a few teams will be able to deal with the Lakers. AD does make a difference, but even so, I think when you look at a team like the Suns, I think they'll be able to dispatch them pretty handily. Their defense is just so bad.
Yeah. I mean, surely Pelinka's head's got to be on a spike by the end of the season. It's genuinely like a disaster class in how to put together a team.
You say that. I think when you look at who they're going to blame, obviously Russ has got most of the criticism at the moment, but I think Vogel, will get most of it actually.
Yeah,
he probably should go as well, though, if I'm being fair.
Well, I think the issue with him is because his whole mantra when he came in was defense. The fact that they're so bad defensively now compared to what they were before, people are going to look to him and ask questions about that. And if he can't provide that, then do you have to look somewhere else?
I do feel a bit sorry for him because I do think the personnel he's been provided is just not good enough to work with. I mean, you can say Russell, AD, and LeBron, you should get a certain number of wins with them, but it just doesn't work. They got rid of all the defense on that team, all the 3-point threat.
They took the soul out of that winning team, really.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, Caruso is the one that people point to. I think KCP was
Caruso
a lot more
was a big one. KCP, I mean, they overhyped KCP when they signed him about like God's gift.
yeah, that was.
Caruso was a big one in terms of the size of the contracts and sort of the fundamentals of what he gave to that Lakers side. But even just like when you just take a look back at some of the other like role players that left, not Kuzma to necessarily like the extent. It was more of just like that whole like spirit the Lakers had of that year, especially with Kobe. With AD building in, Dwight Howard, Turtle, obviously, like they had loads for it. So it was more of it was that whole collective in that year, and that was if it was ever going to happen for the Lakers, it would happen that year, and just the stars aligned for them. So
and I think the biggest indictment on that team is that in free agency they were signing players and starting players that got cut from other NBA teams.
Yeah, I think it does come back all down to AD's health, though. If he's healthy, I don't think they're this bad.
No, 100%.
No.
And I think last season they were really good last season, right up until I think it was actually it might have been LeBron or AD who got injured. Someone did, but AD's the one who's injured more often than not, so I lean towards him. And it'll be interesting to see how they take that franchise moving forward, really, because obviously a huge name, and I do think LeBron's got another couple of years in him, but I don't know how happy he's going to be.
He wants to play with his son, doesn't he? Whenever he comes.
Exactly.
So I think wherever he drafts that, he'll do. I think I don't think he's in this year. He's next year.
No, he's not this year.
He's not this year. So I think whenever it comes about, he'll do 1 year with that team. So even if he like retires from the league and then Bronny gets drafted, I think any team would take LeBron out of retirement at like 41 to play. And any team would take him out at like 41 because he'll go on like a veteran minimum contract and sit on the bench just so he gets some time with it. There'll be 100% a clip of Bronny throwing up an oop and LeBron slamming it down like the D-Wade one. They'll 100% be like that.
He could probably be like the 26th best player in that draft and get drafted one because you like LeBron.
Yeah, 100%. It will be something like that. You'll get extra draft picks with it for that. But I think we can we'll move away from LeBron and his Lakers, and we'll talk about there was sort of the marquee matchup of the NBA since the All-Star break, and like tickets were going for $10,000, despite the fact that both sides were saying this was just a regular season game, but everyone pretty much knew it wasn't a regular season game. We'll talk about Philly v the Nets and the things that we'll take away from it. So obviously Ben Simmons didn't play, still suffering from his back soreness that he had in Philadelphia. He's been going on a few shoot-arounds, things like that. There's been some videos of him practicing with the teammates in the Nets. I was quite surprised that he came out to Philly anyway and partook in the shoot-around in the warm-ups, to a very passionate Wells Fargo Center. They made sure they let him know of what he did for them. We'll say that. And I mean, the game itself was really good. Harden had an absolute stinker. His first bad game for Philly, I'd say, because he's been very good since he's joined. But it's more of that game he was just shooting bricks the entire night. He's had a few wobbly ones after it as well since. But I think the main thing is just that you saw of that when the Nets get going, you just do remember it is Kevin Durant, and this is why you can't rule them out. Regardless of anything, I don't know what they are now, but I know I looked when just before the trade happened and before All-Star break, and the Nets were like 7-1. I don't know, that might have been the Bucks actually. I think that might have been 7-1, but regardless, you just can't rule these Brooklyn Nets out of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't know how everyone else feels, but a healthy Kevin Durant's the best player in the league to me.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
I think the only other
I don't
argument
think
I
there's
would have
much.
I'd have Giannis up there with him as well as like a 1A,
Yeah.
1B, but I would give the edge to Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I think so as well. And Kyrie was particularly good that game. A game that he could actually play. Although there is growing talk that he might be able to play come playoff time, which would be obviously a massive, massive boost for them. But
I think the only one
I think it's a reminder.
The only one he won't be able to play in is if they play the Raptors. I think that's the only thing.
Yeah,
I think that's a cemented one.
A reminder of sort of KD's talent. I think maybe a reminder of Kyrie's talent is always probably appreciated as well, because I think there's a lot more issues at bay with that than KD getting injured a couple times. But regardless, I think KD mentioned that they were targeting the Sixers in transition, which I thought was an interesting point. I find that fast breaks in transition in playoff time don't really matter as much because the game just slows down completely.
Yeah.
But they are a slow team when you think about it. James Harden likes to take his time with the ball. Joel Embiid's a big man, and those are their two main guys. But I think I've been quite encouraged with the Sixers, since Harden joined. He's obviously held a little bit back in that end of Nets time, as he is prone to do when he wants to leave a team. I think we've got a bit of evidence about that now. But Tyrese Maxey is, I feel like, not taking another step up because he's been good all season, but he's obviously, I think, benefiting off of the open shots that he's getting by the fact that they've got to guard James Harden and Joel Embiid now. That game would obviously be a bit of a disappointment to him, but it is just a regular season game at the end of the day. And when it comes to playoff time, I know there's no one on the Nets that can guard Joel Embiid, and not many that can guard James Harden either, or give him that much of a hard time. But Drummond done pretty well that game.
Drummond did very well that game.
Seth Curry was cold. He said a little bit to the bench, which I found quite strange because his father-in-law is literally sitting on it.
I think in those situations, it's like I'd want to do that. Like if the teammate of mine left and came back, and then you all knew he was talented anyway, I would expect some smack to be spoken. So I think in that regard, I've got like no issues with any of that. It's what you want to see, especially with the Embiid and Durant stuff. Like it's what you want to see on the NBA.
Yeah, you want these storylines to happen.
Well, it's the storylines, but you just want the players to actually want it in the regular season, because half the time some of them just don't really even care. But like games like this is what I say, when they come out and they say it's a regular game, it absolutely wasn't. They was 100% fighting on the we got Ben Simmons, we're not going to take the L on this trade for this game in their house. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that the thing for me is, and what I'm really interested to see is that now that you've got Embiid and Harden, who are undoubtedly 1 and 2, and you can put them in any order. Embiid, I think, for me, will always be Philly's main guy.
Oh, at the moment, he's just the one. Embiid.
Yeah, but I think regardless of like in form, I think they'll always play around Joel Embiid rather than playing around James Harden. But the thing I'm most interested in is to see what Tobias Harris is now going to do, because you've seen it before. He's not a number 2 guy. He just isn't. He's a very, very talented basketball player, but he can't be a number 2 fit. He's not like your Chris Middleton. He won't get you 30 points if you need him to as a number 2 on a big night. He can absolutely put 30 up, but as a 3 guy, when he hasn't got the pressure on him as much as that second guy, that if your main guy isn't firing, it's all on me. If the main 2 aren't going, he has less pressure and he'll get going. When he's got an open bucket for a shot in the corner, Tobias Harris is a fantastic guy. Shouldn't be on a max contract. There's no debating that. But this sort of synergy team right now of the Embiid, Harden, Maxey, Harris, and then you've still got like Shake Milton and stuff, who's taken a little bit of a back step. But regardless, Philly are in a good place right now. My only worry is James Harden's health in terms of in general just hasn't been good for a little while now. Embiid's a bit better recently, especially at course of this season. But at the same time, we know what Joel Embiid's like. If he takes one big landing from trying to slam the ball down and takes a big landing on his back, the whole Wells Fargo is absolutely stunned to silence, because they're absolutely bricking it for the fact that if Embiid's out of a series, that Philly are out. So, because again, and we've seen it come playoff time again, the reputation I wouldn't say is 100% stuck on him, and his ability to change it. But in these big games in playoff series, James Harden does not have the best reputation for turning up when it matters.
Yeah.
And granted, now he isn't the number one guy. In the Nets, it was a bit different because they didn't have the full three of them, so you can cut them some slack for that. But now is where Joel Embiid is going to need him to be at 100% James Harden level regular season in these playoff games. That's when you're going to sort of want to see it kick into effect. But it's
they were calling them small game James the other day, which I thought was slightly harsh.
I mean, it is harsh, but at the same time, it's like there's not really too much you can really argue against it. It's obviously hyperbole and it's exaggerated to beyond any doubt, but you do need that big legacy playoff series for Philly now. I think you need to have a good run of games where you're scoring high, like low 30s minimum on good percentage shooting. So that'll be it. That'll be it for James.
Something else to add to that.
The final bit we'll cover off. We'll discuss the wonky Warriors. Been a bit up and down. Obviously, Clay coming back was a really big positive for Dub Nation, but it's not really been plain sailing, I'd necessarily say, since that. I mean, obviously Steph Curry's been good. His numbers have dwindled off a little bit, but they're missing their big man, aren't they?
Yeah, I think what this has shown over the past few months, if anything else, is how important Draymond Green is to this Warriors team. A load of people love to undersell him and joke about the triple singles and things like that, but the point is, you know, while Steph is a point guard, he is not the main playmaker of that team, really. Bloody James. Draymond Green is the playmaker for that Warriors team. He facilitates everything that happens. He's also the best defender on that team, and I think they're still the second best for defensive rating in the league. But while he was one of the biggest reasons they were first for so long, and he, in my opinion, was the defensive player of the year. But he's gone down for so long that other people have caught up and maybe overtaken him. But you know, when you see them without him, you see that the actual system itself just doesn't function anywhere near as well.
Yeah. They are 18-16 this season without Draymond Green. And I mean, we saw before he got injured, they were arguably the best team in the league. I was still on the side of the Phoenix Suns. But yeah, you just mentioned everything he does. I think everyone kind of knows now. He's one of those players that maybe could have gone underrated because, like you mentioned, the stats don't exactly sort of draw you in. But I think everyone knows the intangibles that he brings to that team. Obviously a key factor in bringing them the championships that they've deserved. And with Clay, I think it's been a bit of a struggle figuring him back in. I think when he did come back, the thing I was saying is I know he's going to be able to put up these big nights where he can just like shoot the lights out of the ball, and he doesn't even need to touch it to do it. He just off the ball movement sort of mastery in that respect. But defense is where I was intrigued to see where he was at coming back from those two really, really damaging injuries. And he's not as good defensively. I mean, maybe he'll get back to it next season with a bit more time. I know coming midway through a season after an ACL is very, very difficult. But yeah, he's not that right now. And they've got a lot of good players in that position that they can play as well. I mean, Jordan Poole's been just so good all season. Kuminga's coming into things a little bit more, so they've got some nice pieces. It's just without Draymond, there's just something not clicking.
He's meant to be back soon, though, right?
Yeah,
I'm not actually sure what his timeline is.
So, I mean, I saw that, and again, this is another bit for it. I think it's been like 2 months since he was out. So I think he's got to be in and around touch and go. I don't think he's like questionable yet, and it'll be a game day decision, but he's got to be close. The one I did see was that James Wiseman's been playing some games in the G League now. And James Wiseman coming back will be a huge thing for them, because realistically, in terms of where do the Warriors sit right now? So the Warriors are third.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll drop into fourth. I just don't think I don't think Utah or Dallas will make up those 4 or 5 games on them. I think they'll comfortably get third. I think Memphis will probably pull away a little bit more and they'll secure second seed. So they don't need to rush, in my opinion, Wiseman back. They'll probably bring Draymond back into the fold in the latter stages of the regular season. But providing the rest of them stay fit, if they get Draymond and James Wiseman back, that completely changes the way upon which, one, with Draymond, their defense is set up, but two, James Wiseman gives you the ability to play so many different options then with such an effective shooting center in terms of that manifold. So,
I think the main thing with Wiseman is just being able to have a big body on someone, because when you see them come up against a team like Denver or something like that, they just can't do anything with a player like Jokic, for example. He's just too much for them. They need bodies to be able to chuck him.
The thing is with Wiseman as well, I rate the talent. He's played like little basketball in a good number of years now. I mean, even going back to college, it wasn't even an injury thing. He just, I can't remember what that was now, just ruled ineligible to play in college basketball after playing like 1 or 2 games. Didn't really play summer league, so came into the regular season, played a couple, got a really bad injury, hasn't played since. I think he's a really good player. I think trusting him in a big moment in the playoffs, like you said, maybe against a Nikola Jokic or even someone else, might be a bit much for him. I think, I mean, right before his injury anyway, they were kind of Warriors fans that I've seen you say he's a little bit out of his depth here. He's got a lot of learning to do, but he can only be a benefit to have that big body to throw on someone. I'm not sure how big of a or significant an impact he'll have on the rest of the season. I mean, Draymond's the big one. Like that's uncontested. If they don't get him back, like, and that's the thing. It's not just coming back. They got to maintain his fitness, which is sometimes an issue. But if he's not back and on sort of full cylinders by the time of playoffs, I don't see him winning a series, if I'm quite honest.
I don't know about not winning a series, but they definitely won't be going to the conference finals, which I think is the minimum people expect from the Warriors team. I think the healthy Warriors with Draymond and Wiseman being able to put in the lineup should be beating everyone except maybe the Suns, but even then, I'd maybe side with the Warriors.
Would they play the Nuggets right now? Because they're in the 3rd seed, and I think Nuggets are 6th, right? I think it might be. And the Nuggets will get Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray back. And I know it's kind of the same point I just mentioned. You got players coming back from injury. It's not really like, it's a bit of a chalk off, if I'm quite honest. I don't expect Jamal Murray to be Jamal Murray the rest of the season, you know. But it's not something I would really want to face in the first round anyway. But,
no.
I mean, Denver and Minnesota are so close, and I think there's 1 or 2 games in it. I think
the
Timberwolves might play a bit more
on a Denver downfall, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Jokic is just too good.
I mean, I think if you're the Warriors, you definitely don't want to play Denver because Jokic is such a problem for your team.
Yeah.
Agreed. Do we have anything else necessarily that we want to discuss?
Do we want to touch on MVP race at any stage?
I mean, we absolutely can.
Yeah, I'd say right now I'll just throw out my pick. Personally, I'd still be with Embiid, but I think Giannis and Jokic are right there with him. I think the record of the Nuggets will probably take Jokic out of the race, even though he's just on his performances alone, he's definitely up there, and I think you can argue he's number 1 at the moment. DeRozan is, I'd say, after those 3, along with Ja Morant. I think they're just underneath. What the Grizzlies are doing right now is just incredible, and I think Ja Morant deserves all the credit in the world. But that's where I stand personally.
It will fall between Embiid and Jokic, and I do think that Embiid sort of won his overall record, and two last year not getting it, I think will play a factor as well in it. And then ultimately the record of the Sixers, I think, will tip it for Embiid as things stand. So
where would you think the Sixers will end up at the end of the season then? Do you think we're talking 1st, 2nd?
I mean, I think they'll be hard pressed to come lower than 2nd. I think especially with what you normally see the Bucks do, they normally sort of enter to wind Giannis down once sort of a position is secured. I think they'll end up. I mean, right now they play the Cavs, so I think they'd sort of be fine with that.
Yeah, you would be
in that regard. Really? So again, anything will change because there's still another 15 games to play or something around that. But I'd be quite hard pressed if they didn't take down Giannis's and Chris Middleton's minutes in these games. I mean, looking at the odds for it, Embiid and Jokic are very, very close on odds Giannis is 7-1, and then it's 18 for Ja Morant, 22 for DeRozan, 33s for your Steph and Lucas. So for me, it is a 2-horse race. So.
I was going to say, do you not subscribe to the whole Ja Morant, DeRozan thing? I know Ja's just been getting like crazy hype recently.
They're crazy good, but it's more of I mean, pointless scoring is very harsh to say, but it's
it's definitely not pointless scoring.
No, I know that's what it's not what I'd use. It's more of just like I think there's been such a point now with Embiid needing this sort of season, especially after not getting it last year. I'd be quite pushed to. I wouldn't give it to a Ja Morant over a Joel Embiid on any sort of form of it, just because of how dominating he's been this year for him. So. I would personally be quite surprised if, especially, the Philly came above Denver in terms of position, that it would go to Joel. So
I'm actually, I mean, you're both going to be. I'm leaning towards the side of Jokic at the minute, and I do tend to go for a Jokic a bit more than an Embiid. But I just think his team is so bad.
I agree. Yeah. Personally, if Denver were better, then I probably would lean toward Jokic purely because I just like him more as a player and how he plays the game.
But he's doing hard carry at the moment.
It is, but this is the argument that was like fought for Steph last year and things like that. It's the issue that you do have to take into account the team.
I mean, the Nuggets are better than the Warriors.
Yeah, the Nuggets are, but it's more of just that like. Philly are better than both, so it's like you then.
Yeah, I agree. It's fine margins, but
it is fine margins, but this is unfortunately sort of the NBA, and I don't like how it is because I think these awards should be based purely off of a player's performance, but they're just not. So there's no point sort of digging about for it. So,
I mean, I like the 3 front runners being international. That's pretty cool.
And I think that shows how basketball's grown over the past maybe decade or two. It's really pushed. The NBA's really pushed internationally now.
Yeah. We were having this discussion the other day, though, where they've got these 3 sort of big international superstars. And I know big men don't tend to resonate as well with, like, the greater mainstream sort of media, if that makes sense. But none of them seem to have sort of resonated that much. Even like Giannis.
I would say that's definitely a problem when trying to push to the American market and appeal to the public there. I think the one that's got the best chance of doing that out of the international boys would probably be Luka. I think he's definitely more endearing to the American public than those other 3 are.
I mean, we're not going international here. I think Ja might be the most marketable guy they have at the moment. I mean, you just look at the social media stats about, I can't remember which game it was, where he done some absolutely mental dunk. I think it was against the Spurs.
Every game.
Yeah, I know he does it every game, but there was one particular dirty one he done against the Spurs. But he is giving me some severe like Derrick Rose vibes at the minute. He's just a great.
I don't think he wants to hear that.
No, he doesn't want Derrick Rose vibes.
No,
I think his style of play as well definitely helps.
Yeah, he's an exciting guy, but I'm sure he'll probably have. I mean, that was really cool, you know, when Allen Iverson done he tweeted the picture with his MVP trophy with like Ja's jersey hanging off it is like soon, and I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a nice
for Memphis as well. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, 100%. Small market team.
Yeah,
nice to 100%.
See. But I think if that's that, then I'll wrap it up in terms of the 100. So I mean, as a little thing, as a little 100th giveaway, we are going to give away, thanks to our friends over at NBA 2K and 2K UK. We have a copy. It's not going to work because the virtual background is it. We've got a special copy of the 75th anniversary edition of NBA 2K22 on PlayStation 5. So we'll give that away on our socials, probably linked under the tweet for this podcast in general. But yeah. I think if that's everything, then we'll wrap this one up. Thank you very much for watching this time, not listening. Although this will also still be on Spotify.
Yeah, mostly we'll probably be listening anyway. But for the ones that are watching,
and all of the editing and absolutely ruining my fans' MacBook is going to be it's going to be for this. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Bear with us on the dodgy webcams and everything like that. It will come better over time. # soon come. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next podcast. Cheers.